presenting Meltdown. This is in Las Vegas, with Samsung's launch of a curved screen. I have Michael Bay there. He's the director of the Transformer movie series, very successful director. He's there to promote their new TV. And this is Michael's presentation.
Well, today, my job as a director is I get to dream for a living.
When you're known for such unbelievable action, what inspires you? How do you come up with these unbelievable ideas?
I create visual worlds that are so beyond everyone's normal life experiences. And Hollywood is a place that creates a viewer escape. And what I try to do is, as a director, I try to the type is all off, sorry, but I'll just swing this.
Tell us what you think.
Yeah, we'll wing it right now. I try to take people on an emotional ride, and
The Curve? How do you think it's going to impact how viewers experience your movies?
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Michael Bay for joining us.
Disaster. Total disaster. Credibility destroyed right there. And it didn't have to be like that. There was no reason for that to happen. Because only Michael Bay and the guy on stage had any idea of what Michael Bay was going to talk about. And by relying on the teleprompters, like Barack Obama has one on the left, one on the right, so he's constantly looking left, he looks right, he looks left, that's his eye contact, right? There's a teleprompter. He had a teleprompter too, but it didn't work. He was lost. But only he knew. Only he knew what he was going to say. We, the audience, had no idea. He could have said anything. We would have been happy with it. But he showed, the teleprompter's gone down, we're going to wing it. I think he wung it for about 5 seconds. And then the body language when he left, totally different. So as presenters, if we ever get stuck in a situation where we lose track of what we're going to say or we get out of order, don't worry. Only you know where this is going. Audience doesn't have a clue. Don't show it. Carry on as if this is all part of the plan. So that's now become one of the legendary meltdowns of presenting to avoid. And we're going to go on to looking at presenting complex information clearly. So first of all, have a think about something that's rather complex that you can present to us. It could be a system, it could be a method, it could be some data. Think of something that's a bit complex that you can create a presentation from. We've got some detail here in terms of how we're going to do that. So this particular module, whoops, right, try that way. Complex information understood by another expert, no problem. No problem. They get it, they're good. It's when you are dealing with people in your audience who are not experts. How do you explain something that's rather complex to them that they can understand? It doesn't have to be dry and boring. Even if it's detailed data, complex data, it doesn't have to be dry and boring. What's the level of your audience? Where do I need to pitch this? Too low, too high? Where's the middle? Then, logical progression of ideas. When it's complex, you need to have very good structure. Otherwise, people just get lost. And don't forget to have some emotional contact with your audience. Through your facial expression, through your voice, through your body language. Connect. Even if it's a dry subject, you can still connect. So there's a pattern for this. And I gave an example before of an analogy. Right? Opening with an analogy. An analogy is good because it takes two things that are not necessarily related, hooks them together in a way that makes things clear. For example, an analogy for presenting complex information might be like running a bath. If, nice Japanese bath, if we don't put enough water in there, then you can't get clean. You're not satisfied. You can't soak. That's not going to work. If we put too much water in there, it runs out of the bathroom and spills everywhere and floods the whole apartment. That's not going to work either. In the same way, we have to understand our audience's level. If we give them too little, they're frustrated. If we give them too much, they're drowning. So when we think about our audience, that'll tell us the level of complexity we need to go to properly communicate. So there's an analogy I just used as my opening to describe presenting complex material, relating this to running a bath. Two unrelated things which are related together. Then you explain what that analogy means. Then you give the key message you want to get across, and then again, you close it out. Right, this is in the manuals, we'll go through this in a minute. But that's your basic structure we need to work with. So this is a very simple, I'll bring this up. It's a bit similar to what I used before about the aircraft. This is a NASA spacecraft when they were still flying them. Right, so as takeoff and landings are critical of NASA spaceflight, openings and closings will competent present. Same thing, combining NASA spacecraft with opening and closing of a presentation, you bring them together, it makes a point. That's the analogy. So, first of all, you need to think of something complex that you can tell us about. Secondly, you need to think of an analogy of how you're going to explain it. So we're good. So on page 31, now you have your analogies. Just get your analogy down. You open with the analogy. Market block is like a traffic signal. That's all you write. Market block is like a traffic signal. You don't explain it, you just say what it is. What that means is, blah, 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 you explain it. Then, what's your key message that you want to get across about this complex subject? Okay, you then explain the complex subject. Then we'll probably get to that point. We go now into our first close. You see here, we have the same pattern. Opening, in this case the opening is the analogy. Explain the analogy, key message. Then we go into our close, finish it off, but there's also Q&A now. So when we have Q&A, we have to have a second close. Can you think why? Why wouldn't we just finish there? So you do your opening, explanation, blah, blah, closing, Q&A. Why would you have a final close? Yeah, what do you think, Al?
Because you don't want your message to be distorted.
Sorry?
You don't want the message to be distorted. You want
That's one good reason. What else? Why else would you do it?
Restate your message.
Restate your message, yeah. They might have forgotten it. Also, it's not just a matter of your message being distorted. It might have been hijacked. Right? You start down the process of a logical, structured presentation. You're all in control, remember? Till we get to here, you are in control, 100%. Now, unless you know what you're doing, no control. Because somebody in your audience can hijack the whole subject matter, take it off on some tangent, and now you finish on something completely unrelated to what you were talking about. So you've got to bring it back. You've got to wrap it up. You've got to control the ending. Because you want last impression. You want to be the owner of the final impression. The way to do that is second close. Might just capture something you did in the first close or a slight variation, doesn't matter. Last message comes from you, back on message, final impression is you remain in control throughout. When you get into Q&A, you often see that. People just, the energy goes down, they can't answer the questions, they're under attack, their confidence is killed, and they finish, boom. Right? Shouldn't be like that. You stay in control. We'll deal with that in a moment. But this is your pattern. The first thing here, the guideline is, you should always set a time for Q&A. Why do you think that is? Why should we set a time? Why should we specify we have 5 minutes for questions, we have 10 minutes for questions, we have 15 minutes for questions? Why should we set that time? Should we specify?
company does it to try to get people to actually think of questions. It's usually just the silence.
Silence, yes. You're going to be telling them. There's another reason. Why should we set a time limit?
Oh, because you're talking about if it's controlled, taken over by somebody else.
Could
that
be.
way you can shut them
Could be a
down.
hijack. It could also be a very hostile audience. You could be there, you're the presenter, and there's some angry people. And you're it. And they're going to take their anger on you. Now, if you don't set a time limit, and you try and cut the presentation short, it looks like you're a coward. It looks like you're running away. It looks like you're scared of the audience. So you always set a limit, because you don't know, oh, are they a hostile audience or not? You don't know who's in the audience most of the time. So you always say, we have 5 minutes for questions. Always, or 10 minutes for questions. Set it. So then when you get to time, you can say, now we have the last question. Thank you, we've now finished Q&A. You can then leave with your reputation intact, that you're not a coward. You didn't run away. You hung in there to the very end, regardless of those hostile questions. That keeps you looking like a professional. And you start with, and as I said before in the first video, when you want to ask a question, you model what you want to see. So you put up your own hand like that, and you ask, who has the first question? Why would we say that? Why would we just say, who has a question? Why would we say, who has the first question? Why would we say that?
To get the alphas involved.
Sorry?
Get the alphas involved.
The alpha's involved. Okay, yes, the people are really gung-ho. What else? What else do you think?
To show respect to the questioners, to identify or to give
Credence to the first person brave enough to ask the question? Yeah. It's also saying, hey, guess what? There's going to be more than one question. You know, in Japan, now we have time for question and answer. Who has the first question implies there's going to be a bunch of questions. It says it's okay to ask questions. There's going to be a number of them. Now, if there's no questions, then guess what? You make up a question. There's no questions, right? So a question I often ask is blah, 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 and then you answer it. Who has the next question? By which time there'll be enough bravery in the audience, hopefully, for someone to ask a question. So then we're listening. We're listening for the question. So, okay. So you repeat or paraphrase. Now, be very, very careful here. Never repeat a hostile question. Howard, is it true that 10% of the staff at our hotel are going to get chopped and have no jobs by the end of this year because of budget cuts back at headquarters? The question was, were 10% of us going to lose our jobs in a few months? No, you're putting fuel on the fire. Paraphrase it. Take the heat out. The question was about appropriate staffing levels. So you paraphrase the question to take the anger out of the question. So you're back in control of the question. Someone's got a tough question, you take the question like a magician. You make it disappear. And you replace it with this brand new, sparkly, wonderful paraphrase that is much more neutral. You stay in control with your paraphrase. So be careful about repeating hostile questions. If it's a positive question, is it true that Dale Carnegie is really the greatest training company in the world? The question was, is Dale Carnegie the greatest? You definitely repeat that one, right? Don't miss that chance. But if it's hostile, paraphrase it. Okay? And then you respond. Okay? Now when you respond, if Tsujimura-san asks me the question, when I respond, I start with my answer for 6 seconds to Tsujimura-san. Then I pick up Kate and Bruce, Kage-san, Kame-san. I will answer everybody, not just the questioner. Answer the whole room, because they're all part of the audience, not just the questioner. So respond to everybody. Then you get to the, who has the final question? Then they know it's time up. No final question, which in Japan usually there's never a final question. Thank you very much, and then you go into your final closing point again. As I mentioned, blah, 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 thank you very much, finish. You got the idea how the Q&A works? We'll get a chance to practice that. If you do get a question and you don't know the answer, be honest. So I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. I'll talk to you offline and try and find out for you. Who has the next question? Let's move right on. You are not expected to know everything. Don't be embarrassed about not being able, but clean it up. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. I will find out and I'll get back to you directly. Who has the next question? So you've dealt with it, you've moved on. You're still in control. So now we should be getting into our final close. So after developing those likely questions, what's your final close? Please design now the last close that you'll use. So you've got opening with your analogy, explain the analogy, what is the message, first close, bridge to Q&A, you have 5 minutes for questions. Who has the first question? Who has the final question? Final close, wrap it up.